So, in keeping with this theme of Mahamudra, this very cryptic term in Sanskrit called that translates as great being, which really means it's sort of the pinnacle of Buddhist practice. It kind of distills things to the main points couched in the sort of the yogic teachings of mind as taught by the Buddha and then by masters in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition that came later. So I'm going to read you this passage that I've been reading from the last couple of weeks. This very lovely, large volume, Mahamudra and Related Instructions. And this is by the same person who has a very long exposition here on the experience of realizing the nature of mind. And this is Lama Shang. He's a 12th century master, a Kagyu master in this lineage. And here at this point in this reading, sort of picking up from last week, he is explaining to us sort of the experience of non-duality and what that means, right? That encouraging practice, the mind basically begins when we first sit. I think it might have been a couple of weeks ago, there was this reading of what happens in the mind when we begin to sit on the cushion or the chair or lying down. What is the experience like? And he likens it to these different bodies of water. At some point, when we begin to sit, our mind is like a rushing river. It just is flowing downstream very quickly. And then it kind of dwindles down to sort of a stream. And then it dwindles to a very free flowing, almost brook kind of thing. And so this sort of settling happens naturally in the mind. So we don't have to try to make it happen. And so then the following week was a little bit more in depth about the nature of mind that we encounter when the mind quiets. And we're not talking about are my thoughts different, but rather is my experience of awareness becoming clearer. With the calming comes clarity, naturally. So in Mahamudra practice, this first stage that we call Shamatha, and we talked about this last couple of weeks, which literally means peaceful abiding. It means calm abiding. And it's that calm abiding that arises naturally by practicing some sustained attentions, voluntarily sustaining attention on an object of your awareness. And by doing this in an open way, in an easeful way, this calm abiding arises naturally. So we're not having to try hard to get there. Quite the contrary. We're sort of relaxing into it. And so this Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, is at its heart a tradition of non-duality. Ultimately, this is the goal, much like Zen as well, only it's communicated slightly differently. So this notion of non-duality, what is it? According to Lama Shang, what is it that he is telling us? And so I'll pick up this reading here from that question. So what is this non-dual awareness? It's realizing and not realizing it that differentiates samsara from that which we call nirvana. Up until now, before this realization, I was like one who was just asleep and dreaming dreams. I dreamt that I wandered in the ocean of samsara. I dreamt that I suffered in the hells, and so on. I dreamt that troubled, I turned to the Guru. I dreamt that I practiced his instructions. I dreamt that experiences arose in my mind. I dreamt that the luminosity arose as the Dharma Kaya. I dreamt that the darkness of thought was dispelled. I dreamt that there was no separation between meditation and post-meditation. I dreamt that realization arose. I dreamt that objectless compassion arose toward beings without realization. I dreamt that I attained the supreme Mahamudra and that my form bodies spontaneously accomplished the benefit of all beings. When you suddenly wake from that sleep, there was no suffering of samsara. There is no turning to the guru because you were troubled. There is no practicing his instructions. There is no arising of experiences in the mind. There is no arising of luminosity as the Dharmakaya. There is no dispelling the darkness of thoughts. There is no remaining in non-thought. There is no arising of wisdom's realization. And there is neither beings nor compassion. There is neither enlightenment nor attainment. There is neither beings nor benefiting them. And there is neither truth nor falsity. In the instant that you realize non-duality, you have certainty that all appearances and sounds are mind. So that the aspect of this teaching is made manifest. You have certainty in the clarity of the mind, so that the aspect of this teaching is made manifest. You know the self-knowing to be like an illusion as well, so that the illusion teaching is perfected. You know illusion to be empty, so that the utterly non-abiding teaching is perfect. Oof, that's a handful. Oh. So part of the key here is, when I first read this, I had so many questions coming, like, what on earth does this mean, and what does that mean? And part of what he's trying to get us to see is that language and our concepts of things, including wisdom and luminosity and emptiness, that the conceptual sort of mind tries to even own those experiences. And rather than doing this, than practicing, quote unquote, we simply become the quality of mind in a very sort of immediate way, where there's no distinction between I am doing this. There is simply this. Yeah? It's a direct experience. In Zen, it's called Suchness or thusness. We encounter things exactly as they are in that moment, without a filter, without a projection, ultimately, as Lama Shang tells us, without the dream quality. It's just clarity. This is the underlying nature of mind in Mahamudra. So this kind of very cryptic passage that I read, actually, when we can kind of bring it into that lens, it doesn't seem quite so mysterious, but we begin to see a bit more kind of where is the finger, or where's the moon that the finger is pointing to, and not worrying so much about the finger itself.